Chapter 16. The Curse of the Shadow Man. But how on earth do you have the same necklace? Jamal said. He stared at the skull necklace around Grandma de Charoux's neck. It was the twin of the one fastened around his neck. 1,000 questions rushed through his head as he struggled to make sense of the situation. "Oh, my child," Grandma de Charoux said with a wry smile. "I knew your grandmother. Let's just say she was like me." "Wait, she had magic?" Jamal said, feeling even more shocked. He glanced at Riley, then at Malik, who shifted around on the floor, contorting. "Well, that would explain a lot," Malik rasped. "She was kind of strange. Never went outside, wore those dark veils, barely talked." "That's one way to describe us," Grandma de Charoux chuckled. "We were both part of an ancient order of people with good magic. These days, there aren't many of us left in this world. We're sworn to use our powers for good and to protect our city from harm." Riley frowned. "So how do you know the Shadow Man?" "Once upon a time, this entity you're dealing with belonged to our order and used his powers only for good," Grandma de Charoux said, sipping her tea with a grimace. "But he became fascinated by dark magic and, eventually, consumed by greed and his quest for wealth and power. That was when he named himself after the legendary mythical Shadow Man, Dr. Facilier." "Let me guess," Jamal said, feeling his stomach churn sickly. "That was how he became a Shadow Man himself, by aligning himself with evil magic?" "That's right," Grandma de Charoux said. "We expelled him from our order and tried to strip him of his powers. But he had grown too strong. He fought back and defeated us. Your grandmother tried to stop him. That's why she changed so..." She trailed off as if it pained her to finish her thought. "Right. My mother said something about that," Jamal said. "Like how she wasn't always afraid of the sunlight and unable to venture outside." He remembered his grandmother sitting in her rocking chair and the thick curtains drawn against the sun, her body draped head to toe with veils. "Yes, some dark magic leaves a wound," Grandma de Charoux said. "One that can't be healed. It damaged her too badly. She was never the same. I'm sorry you didn't know her before that happened. Dr. Facilier did that to your grandmother." Jamal struggled to absorb all of it. He glanced down at Malik, wishing they could make real eye contact. His brother swirled across the floor. "Tell me about the necklaces," he said, feeling the outlines of the skull sockets pressing into his palm. Many long years ago, we forged them to protect us from the Shadow Man," Grandma de Charoux said. "Oh, my child, he is far older than he appears. That's some dark magic indeed. Then each member of my order retreated into the shadows to hide from him. Our grandmother became a recluse," Malik rasped. "She never left her house. She wouldn't even open the windows. The curtains were always drawn. She wore veils." "Yes, and I retreated into the bayou to my family's land," Grandma de Charoux said, "where I'd be safe from the Shadow Man's magic. Only I fear that over time, he's grown more powerful than even I realized. I'm guessing that he's also the reason your grandmother died. He came after her for that necklace, and she wouldn't give it to him. Instead, she left it to you." "He killed my grandmother?" Jamal said with a start. Grandma de Charoux set lips in a line. "My child, I'm afraid it looks that way." "But if the necklace is supposed to protect me," Jamal said, thinking it over, "and she left it to me to protect me from him, then why could he curse my brother?" "Dr. Facilier can't curse you directly," she explained, "and he can't take the necklace unless you give it to him, because of the protection spells placed on it. but because you gave him something of great value to your brother, it rendered him vulnerable to the shadow curse. Ugh, I'm so stupid, Jamal said, his head falling into his hands. Remorse washed through him. I have to fix this. I'm going to give him the necklace so he'll reverse the curse. My child. Then Dr. Facilier will grow even more powerful, Grandma de Chevreuse said with a worried frown. Eventually, he might get more of the necklaces from the remnants of my order. Then there will be nothing and no one to stop him. But I have to save my brother and reverse the curse. Jamal jumped to his feet and paced around her hut. You said yourself that he's already fading. If I don't at least try to make a deal with the Shadow Man, then my brother will disappear forever. I can't let that happen. Grandma de Chevreuse looked deeply troubled. It is a terrible choice indeed, she muttered. But that's how the Shadow Man works. Isn't there something you could do? Jamal said, looking at her in desperation. He was used to living in a world where adults held all the power and could always help him. He had expected that Riley's grandmother would save them from the Shadow Man. But what if the adults didn't have the ability to save them? What if it was up to him this time? My child, you have to make a choice, Grandma de Chevreuse said. I wish I could help, but it's up to you to decide now. It's either Malik or the entire city of New Orleans. But how do I make that choice? Jamal asked. Either way, somebody loses. I'm so sorry, my child. I wouldn't wish that sort of terrible choice on anyone, but I know you'll do the right thing. She started before the door to the hut blew open. She whipped her head around. Jamal followed her gaze. The dolls crowded into the doorway, their button eyes fixed on Jamal hungrily. They wanted the necklace. What? They broke my protection spells? Grandma de Chevreuse stammered, clutching her staff and raising it. Child, the Shadow Man's power has grown stronger. The doll's eyes fixed ravenously on the skull necklace. Jamal felt a jolt of fear and tucked the necklace away into his shirt. He couldn't let them get it. The necklace was his only bargaining chip to use with Dr. Facilier to save his brother. The dolls swarmed through the doorway, scrambling across the floor toward Jamal. Riley, get your staff, Grandma de Chevreuse yelled, lightening up her staff. Riley grabbed a smaller staff, raising it to fight against the dolls. She reached into her pocket, producing a handful of gold dust. She joined her grandmother. Wait, you have good magic too? Jamal said in shock, staring at Riley. Grandma's been training me, she said. Ever since we moved back, it runs in my family's blood. Riley blew the dust at the dolls. It swirled around them, but then it faded and the dolls regrouped and lurched toward Jamal. One doll grabbed his foot, while another reached for his arm, and another leapt off the sofa towards his neck. Protect the necklace, Grandma de Chevreuse yelled, blowing more dust at them. Riley and I will hold them off, but you have to run. Take your brother. They're too strong. We can't hold them back forever. Malik, hurry, Jamal yelled as he fled from the hut with his shadow brother trailing right behind him. He glanced back, hearing sounds of struggle coming from behind them. Unnatural explosions of reddish light and silver and gold dust swirled around the hut as Riley and her grandmother fought back against the dolls. Jamal hoped they would be okay, but he didn't have time to worry. Run! Grandma de Chevreuse's cries echoed through his head, spurring him to run faster. He staggered into the dark bayou, plunging into murky water that sloshed over his shoes. A warm wind whipped through the cypress trees, while thunder rumbled and lightning crackled. The hurricane, Malik warned in his ear. I think it's making landfall tonight. I heard it on the news. Jamal remembered his parents watching the local news and tracking the new storm. It had recently intensified over the Gulf of Mexico. It was now threatening their city. More lightning bolts exploded overhead, followed by a sharp crackle of thunder. The bayou lit up for one brilliant second, then fell into thick darkness again. Hurricanes were a normal part of life in their Gulf city, but as Jamal looked up at the sky, he realized that something seemed different about the storm. Unnatural, even. "The Shadow Man," Malik rasped, as if reading his mind. "I can't explain it, but since he cursed me, it's like I can feel his magic." "Are you saying this hurricane is his doing?" Jamal said, his stomach clenching. He ran blindly, water sloshing up to his ankles now. "Not his doing exactly," Malik gasped, out right behind him. His voice sounded even weaker. "But it's like he made it worse somehow. I can't explain it." That made Jamal more afraid. He thought about the deal he was considering making with Dr. Facilier, trading the skull necklace for his brother's life. But if what Riley's grandmother said was true, then the necklace would make the Shadow Man even stronger. Could he take that risk? More lightning pulsed overhead, accompanied by a deafening clap of thunder. Meanwhile, the wind was growing stronger, rattling the cypress branches draped with moss. Each time the bayou lit up, the shadows twisted around them, reaching out their clawed hands. Jamal dodged the shadow monsters, running faster. Then the skull necklace lit up, glowing with reddish light. "Oh no, he's coming," he hissed, trying to run even faster. He burst into a clearing when, suddenly, red light exploded over the bayou. It wasn't lightning this time. It was something else. A long, reedy shadow stretched over the clearing, extending toward them like a curse. The skeletal figure had almost impossibly slender arms and legs, and a top hat perched on his head. The shadow clutched a staff. The crystal on it glowed with red light. It was Dr. Facilier. Then the Shadow Man himself stepped into the clearing behind his shadow. He clutched his staff, with the crystal glowing dark red. He grinned, his teeth resembling an alligator's. He stood taller than before. He tipped his top hat toward Jamal. "Enchanté, little man," he said in a smooth voice. "A tip of the hat." Then, suddenly, Dr. Facilier's shadow came to life, uncoupling from him and acting of its own accord. It flowed across the clearing and pounced on Malik, startling him with clawed fingers. Malik tried to fight back, but he was too weak. Jamal lurched toward the two shadows to help his brother, but his hands passed through them harmlessly. He couldn't touch them. "No, leave him alone!" Jamal, feeling helpless, yelled at Dr. Facilier. The Shadow Man chuckled, his voice echoing through the bayou, raising all the hair on Jamal's body. "There's only one way to make it stop," the Shadow Man said. "Don't waste my time any longer. The necklace. Hand it over now, or say goodbye to your precious brother forever."